We are up to chapter 5, Mishnah number 1. It's such a joy to get to the 5th chapter of Pirkei Avos, of chapters of our fathers. I'm going to read the Mishnah and we're going to discuss it. It's a very interesting Mishnah. Be'asara ma'amaros nivra ha'olam. With 10 utterances was the world created. Uma Talmud lomar. What's the lesson behind this? V'halo b'mamar echad yachal lihibaros. Is it not that with one utterance it could have been created? Ela lihiparim min harishayim, to exact punishment from the wicked. Shema'abdim es olam shenivra basar ma'amaros, who are destroying the world that was created with 10 utterances. V'litin schar tov l'tzadikim shemekayim es olam shenivra basar ma'amaros, and to give good reward upon the righteous who sustain the world that was created with 10 utterances. So this is going to be a pattern that we're going to see throughout the 5th chapter of Pirkei Avos. Unlike the preceding 4 chapters, the majority of the teachings of this chapter are going to be unattributed. We're not going to say, oh, Rabbi so-and-so taught such and such. And it's going to be dealing with a lot of bigger picture ideas. It's going to be a very different style and probably a little bit more interesting as well. So this Mishnah tells us that the world was created with 10 utterances and not one. And the reason for this is so that way the wicked who destroy the world are going to be punished because they destroyed a world that has 10 utterances, and the righteous are going to be rewarded because they are upholding a world that was created with 10 utterances. So what does this mean? So just the very basic is that if you count in Genesis, how many times does it say, and God said, let there be light, let there be water, let there be animals, let there be a human, let us make man. If you count how many times it says that God made an utterance, God said something, it's 10. And therefore, this world was created with 10 utterances. Now, if you actually count them, it turns out that there's only 9 times in the Genesis narrative where it says that God said, let there be such and such. Yet the Mishnah tells us that the world's created with 10 utterances. So the Talmud answers that you're right. The world is created with 9 times it says, Vayomer, Hashem said such and such, God said such and such. But the 10th utterance was the very first word of the Torah, Bereshis, in the beginning. In the beginning, it's considered like it is its own utterance, and therefore, if you tally up the 9 times it says, and God said, plus Bereshis in the beginning, you have a total of 10 utterances, and that is how the world's created. Now, the obvious question is, why? Why do we have 9 utterances of one ilk, and the 10th utterance of Bereshis, of in the beginning, a different kind of utterance? So this already brings us to some of the deep ideas that we're going to talk about in this Mishnah. The first creation is different than the ensuing creations. The first creation of Bereshis in the beginning is different than the ensuing 9 times it says, and God said, and he created. Why? Because when God created the first creation, what was the status of existence at the time when God made the first utterance? It was the domain of the infinite. Before the Almighty created something finite, before he created time and space and matter and energy, before what we would call today the Big Bang, but of course the one that was orchestrated by God, before the initial creation of anything finite, you had just the world of infinite. And that world is something which is totally beyond us. And that world is very different than the ensuing creation, let there be light. Once there is already existence of the finite variety, that is a different world that we can associate with versus the world that we cannot associate with, the world of the infinite. And therefore, it's important to distinguish the two as being different. And more specifically, the nature of the first creation versus the rest of the 10 creations are also different. The first creation is something out of nothing, what's called ex nihilo. There's no existence, there's no finite matter, there's no finite energy, there's no time, there's no space. It's just infinity. And then there's a creation, ex nihilo, something out of nothing. And what is the nature of the ensuing 9 utterances, the ensuing 9 creations? That is the Almighty taking what exists already and repurposing it and reformatting it and changing it into other things. In the beginning of the Torah, the Ramban in his commentary, he talks about the concept and he gives it the Greek term hiyuli, which is this matter and energy that can be reshaped and resized and reformatted into other things. Day 1 of creation. Creation number 1 is Bereshis, is in the beginning. Is this creation something out of nothing, matter where there was none, energy where there was none, time where there was none, space where there was none. That is Bereshis, one kind of creation. Everything else, Vayomer, and God said, and those are comparable. All the Vayomers are comparable because it's the Almighty taking what he already created and reshaping it. Whereas Bereshis is incomparable to any other creation, and therefore it has a different name. It's not Vayomer, and God said, it is Bereshis, this new creation, something out of nothing. So our Mishnah tells us that the creation happened with 10 utterances. But it could have happened with only 1. And the question of our Mishnah is, well, why did the Almighty create the world the way he did? If you think about it, it's kind of a strange question. What are we proposing here? God should have created the world in a different way? What exactly is the alternative? So the Rambam, he says that it could have been created as follows. And God said, let there be light, let there be man, let there be this, let there be that. It could have bunched all the and God saids into one statement. And the fact that these utterances were separated out as distinct creations, that is something that the Mishnah wants to ponder. Why? That's what the Rambam says. There's a very important Maharal over here. And he tells us that the number 10 is a very significant number. And if you look at the Torah, you see that the term 10 appears very frequently. Abraham, of course, is given 10 tests. The Jewish people in Egypt witnessed the 10 plagues, the 10 miracles. We have the 10 commandments. The Mishnah tells us that the Almighty interfaces with this world with 10 sefirot in 10 different spheres. Whatever that means, it's a Kabbalistic idea. If you look at the ensuing Mishnayos in our chapter, every Mishnah starts off with a number 10. There were 10 generations from Adam to Noah. There were 10 generations from Noah to Abraham. There were 10 tests that Abraham was tested. There were 10 miracles in Egypt, etc., etc. There is significance here to the number 10. And the Maharal explains that the number 10 connotes distinction and superiority and completion and importance. Wherever there is the number 10, there is the indication of God's creation. Moreover, there is the opportunity for God to dwell there. And he quotes a Mishnah we had earlier. The Mishnah talks about 10 people sitting inside the Torah, And that creates a domicile, a residence for God. So what he explains is that there's something very deep going on over here. It's not just that the Almighty did a preponderance of utterances. And the question is, why did he do so many? He could have done fewer. That's not the question of our Mishnah. The question of our Mishnah is, why did the Almighty create the world with 10 utterances? I.e., why did he make this world important? He could have made it less important. From the fact that the Almighty used 10 utterances to create the world, that shows that the world really, really, really matters. And what does that mean? What are the takeaways? What are the consequences of the world really being important? He also points out that the Talmud tells us that this world was created with the letter Hey, the 5th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And the next world, the spiritual world, is created with the letter Yud, the 10th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And of course, Yud corresponds to 10. So the next world is really, really important because it's created with the letter Yud, which is letter 10. But then he tells us that the letter Hey, the 5th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, the way you make it is you make a Daled, and then inside the Daled you put another Yud. And that's to indicate that this world is really indistinguishable from the next world. The next world is entirely holy. This world is also entirely holy. But it also has the Daled, so to speak, that symbolizes the expansiveness of physicality, and that's the tension of this world. This world's described with the letter Hey, because on one end it has the Daled, which is the draw towards materialism and physicality, and inside that you have embedded in the Daled, you have letter Yud, which is to symbolize total holiness, total perfection, total purity, a total replica of the world to come. And the challenge and the tension of this world is that we are drawn both to its physicality and to the physical material allure of the world. And embedded in it, we also have the opportunity to make this world a complete replica of the next world. So our Mishnah is talking about the world being created with 10 utterances. That's not just the count, how many times the Almighty said something to create the world, but the 10 utterances indicate and signify the importance of this world. And the question is why? The world could have been created and mattered less, but that's not what the Almighty wanted. And the reason we're told here is that this world is important, and the consequences of that importance are the fact that we have a say in the trajectory of this world. We determine if this world is going to be upheld or it's going to be destroyed. This world is a partnership. They might have created it with 10 utterances, but the choice of whether or not we continue this world, we uphold this world, we strengthen and nourish this world, or we allow it to wither and die, or we allow it to go by the wayside, or we allow it to be destroyed, that part of creation, well, that's in our hands. And therefore, they might have created a very important and valuable and significant world, and then he gave it off to our fallible hands to decide what to do with it. And if we're righteous, then we're going to have great reward because we're perpetuating and we're maintaining and we're sustaining and nourishing a very valuable world. And God forbid if we choose to become wicked and to ignore the, so to speak, 10, the power, the yud of this world, well then we are going to be responsible for destroying this world. The way I like to think of this is everyone has a job, but some people's job are just more important than other people's job. If you're Neil Armstrong and you're trying to land the moon rover, well, that's really important. Because if you fail, people are going to die. The mission's going to fail. It's going to be a disaster. If you are a physician and there's life and death in your hands, it's really important. If you're a paper pusher, maybe your job is less important. What if you're the serviceman who's in charge of the nuclear football? How important is your job? The entire world is almost in your hands. That's what this Mishnah is telling us. We were given the nuclear football. We could have been given some other responsibility, some other mission that's not so important. They might have said the world's not so important. I'm not creative. We'll create it with one utterance. Make it less important. Make it less serious. But no, he created with 10 utterances. He created with this abundance of holiness and value and importance. And then he said, it's your job to maintain it. It could have been moderately important, but no, it's exceedingly, inordinately important. And it's in our hands. Are we going to uphold the world? Are we going to maintain the world? Are we going to sustain the world? Are we going to destroy it? We are bearers of the nuclear football. The Talmud of the Book of Kiddushin on page 40a, going into 40b, tells us that a person should always view themselves as if they are half righteous and half wicked. Half of your deeds are mitzvos and half of them are sins. You're exactly 50-50. Moreover, the entire world is exactly 50-50. Half of the cumulative deeds of all of humanity are righteous, and half of the cumulative deeds of all of humanity are wicked. And the next decision you make is going to determine not only your destiny, but the destiny of all of mankind, and thus all of existence, all of finite existence. Because all of finite existence is only because of man. And your decision right now is going to determine the direction that the world goes. Same idea. You're holding the nuclear football. The entire world, all of humanity, hinges upon your decision. That is the lesson of this Mishnah. Everything we do matters supremely. The Talmud tells us, if you look at the Genesis narrative, Vayerev Vayevoker Yom Hashishi, the sixth day. The Talmud points out that it adds an extra letter. It could have said Yom Shishi, the sixth day. It says the sixth day. It explains the Talmud that the sixth day of creation is the last day where the Almighty is creating something. But there's another sixth day to come. And that is the sixth day of the month of Sivan, the day of the giving the Torah at Sinai. It explains the Talmud, the Almighty made a condition in creation. The Almighty creates the world on condition, provided that we accept the Torah. The world was not complete until Sinai. You have the Genesis creation, and then you have the completion of that creation at Sinai. And the Almighty made the condition. If the Jewish people accept the Torah, if they take the tools to maintain and perpetuate this world, to perfect this world, to uphold this world, to nurture, to sustain this world, then the world will endure. You fulfilled your part of the deal. I'll keep my part. But in the event the Jewish people reject Torah, if we reject the tools to uphold and maintain the world, then you have not fulfilled your condition, and therefore I'm not creating the world. And therefore I'm going to retroactively destroy the world. And that's the idea of this Mishnah. The Almighty created the world, but it's not complete. We are the partners. Our choices determine whether the world is going to endure or it's going to be destroyed. And this matters a lot. This is the nuclear football. We're in charge, and our choices are going to reverberate for all of eternity. And if we are righteous, think about what that means. The most important job ever given to any person is given to me, is given to you, is given to every person you know. And we have a say to determine what happens. And the Almighty gives us the tools to do what we need to do. And what if we fail? If we fail, then we are reneging upon our side of the deal. And the Almighty says, okay, you don't want to keep up this world? We'll destroy it. And the morale points out that suppose you have 100 righteous people and there's one wicked person. Well, then the 100 righteous people will override the one wicked person and the world will not be destroyed. And therefore, how can you tell the wicked person, hey, if you don't uphold the world, you're going to destroy the world? Well, don't we see the world's not being destroyed? And therefore he says like this, he says, every person is judged as an individual. If you were the only person in the world, how would the world look like? If everyone was like you, what would the world be? If you're a good person, if you're a moral person, if you're a righteous person, if you're even a pious person, and everyone in the world is like that, well, there's no more war, there's no more crime. It's just a beautiful world. And therefore, you are going to be judged as a total individual, and everyone else is going to be abstracted from that calculation. And in the eyes of God, the world was upheld because of you. Conversely, if you're a wicked person, you are also judged as an individual, and in the event that your behavior is one that warrants the world to be destroyed, it's considered as if the world was destroyed due to you. And that is a very unfortunate designation. So that's this Mishnah. It's a beautiful idea that really hammers home the message that we matter. Our choices matter. The Almighty created the world, but it's on condition. It's conditional to us accepting our part of this bargain, and that is that we are going to do whatever we can to maintain, perpetuate, and uphold this world. We are going to do our job, and this is a very important job. This is a job that everything hinges upon, and this world really does matter. It's not one that the Almighty says, you know what, we'll start off again. It's not so important. The Almighty instantly could create a brand new universe. No problem. But no, He cares about this world. He said, I'm going to spend and dedicate 10 utterances to create this world. I'm going to accord it great importance. This world matters to me. And humanity, you have the keys in your hand to determine which way the world goes. What power. And of course, what responsibility for us to make sure that we are doing whatever it is that we can to maintain and perpetuate and uphold the world and be the people that can say, we deserve reward for upholding the world that was created with 10 utterances. I thank you all for listening. My email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com. I look forward to your questions, your comments, and your feedback.